All right, so the case that I decided to look at deals with a high school senior. His name is Blake Hunt from Flushing, New York, and he was injured during a football scrimmage. This injury was a C5 vertebrae shattered, um, and really left him paralyzed from the waist down. So during this football scrimmage on September 1st of 2007, he was going to tackle a running back. He was on the defensive end. I'm going to tackle this running back, and as he was going to make the tackle, the running back's knee hit his face mask or the front of his helmet and snapped his head backward. The collision left Hunt paralyzed from the waist down, and even after receiving treatments from many hospitals in the New York area, it was concluded that he would be paralyzed. And after finding out the news about his injury, Hunt then filed a complaint, and this complaint was to the Department of Education, the Parks Department, and the Public School Athletic League, stating that there was a lack of qualified medical personnel at this scrimmage. There were not proper precautions taken by coaches, athletic trainers, and even officials that were on the field. He also says that he only weighed 140 pounds. Okay, this is a senior, 140 pounds, and was admitting that he's way too small to be competing against larger players in the first place, and was already suffering from a leg injury from, something previous. In addition, Hunt argued that he had not been properly trained. So I don't know if this was a wrongdoing by the coaching staff, or he wasn't, or maybe he was talking about his stature. He wasn't really properly trained in the weight room to build strength and size, or like I said, maybe by the coaches, he wasn't properly trained on the field correctly to make proper tackles, to be in the role that he was not properly trained. And overall, he just wasn't ready to participate in the scrimmage, which I'm not really... The part that I have trouble with is the scrimmage is a scrimmage for a reason. It's kind of like a practice before you go into the game. So I don't know how he wouldn't be ready to go into the scrimmage, or wasn't ready to participate. Maybe it was because of his injured leg in the first place. So as I said, he was going after the Department of Education, the Parks Department, and the Public School Athletic League. And before this case could reach courts, it was settled. It was settled, and Blake Hunt received $8 million for his life-altering injury. And the reason that this settlement was reached before it could reach the courts was because these three departments believed that there could be some actions of negligence, and basically how I see it is they wanted to save their butt and make sure that they wouldn't have to take this to court and possibly face more extreme consequences for the coaching staff, maybe the school itself, the officials and the medical personnel that maybe were or were not there. We don't really know. And it basically saved themselves from learning the, I would say, bad things that happened in high school sports, mostly at the football level. So overall, I really agree with how this decision was made. I think the departments made the smart decision to settle it before a lot of things came out that I think, further damage or harm the football program at the school and the coaching staff as well. Because one of Blake Hunt's major arguments would come from is from this theory of mismatching. And this mismatching theory basically states that you are placing younger, smaller, less skillful players up against the more experienced players who are stronger, faster, bigger. And basically, this issue comes up a lot because coaches use it to progress their more skillful players before heading into games. As I can describe it, I guess it's basically playing against dummies. The bigger and better players are able to do whatever they want, kind of giving them a confidence boost before going into an actual game. And hopefully, I guess from the coaching perspective, gives them motivation going into this game to perform well. Also, if I'm looking at it from this autonomy view, from the prima facie principles, I think Blake Hunt had a choice to participate in the scrimmage. I think he wanted to participate. I'm not really sure what the details are because they were not given. I'm not sure if there was a starting position that he was fighting for and he went out and risked, his already injured leg to fight for the starting position. But it might not have been his overall decision. As we talked about it before in class, he might have been persuaded and coerced to go out there and participate because maybe the starting position was between him and somebody else, and he had to go out there and prove himself that he was capable of doing it. And he is a high school senior, and from what I read, it looks like, this might have been his first time playing football. So I don't know if his lack of knowledge on the game comes directly from the coach or from himself, but I think as a coach, you're really not respecting that autonomy because you're giving him a choice, but it's like you're either going to play or you're not going to play depending on how you do out there. And if he's hurt and he wants to play, then he's going to go out there and do it because he wants to play. Also looking at it from the prima facie principles, I look at justice because when that justice piece comes into play, we want to see how the benefits are spread out for everybody and everything is fair. And in this situation, it is not fair at all. So you've got larger, more skillful players going up against these smaller, less skillful, how could I say it? Their sport age or maybe like their football knowledge is a lot less than what it would be for these larger and more experienced players. So putting them up against each other just does not seem like everyone is getting the same benefits. To me, it just sounds like these bigger guys are going to be able to run right through all these little guys. And whatever happens to these little guys, it's toughen up. You have to do, this is part of the game. You have to toughen up. You have to get knocked down sometimes and stand back up and get back into it. But there's no way the whole entire scrimmage was fair if you're putting, let's say this running back was 210 pounds going up against a 140-pound kid. That's a huge weight change. 70 pounds and running at full speed, trying to tackle him, and knee to the... Anything like that could happen at any point. And it's just in this case, he's left paralyzed, and that is where that negligence could be found. Also look at it from the rules, ethics, and the deontology. It is the coach's duty and obligation to get his players ready. Ready not just for scrimmages, but for games and to win football games. That is the most important part. But I think he was more focused on getting his bigger, stronger, more athletic players more ready for game time situations than he was for these smaller guys that might not get playing time, but they're still on the team. And that's where that mismatching really comes in. Yeah, he's got to win some football games as a coach. He's got an obligation to teach these kids, but when I look at it, he clearly put a lot more attention towards those bigger guys and was not really concerned about the outcome for these smaller, younger guys. And that's also where that negligence comes in. Now, I don't see really any negligence from the officials just because as healthcare professionals, we know that if we see an injury on the field, we have to perform an on-field evaluation and then go from there. So he was obviously taken to a hospital and everything was done correctly. I think most of this negligence falls on the coach. And I believe this was settled before it reached the courts, because I think there were less consequences for it. Maybe this coach got to keep his job, and maybe the athletic trainers, if they did perform anything wrong, would be, I guess, saved or not really looked at, because not all this evidence is going to be presented to a court and to a judge and a jury, whatever it would be. But at the end of the day, I really do agree with how everything turned out, because I think those departments made a smart choice. Whether it be unethical, maybe it stops Blake Hunt from getting what he really does deserve. But it was settled and he took what he got, and that is the end of the story with that. So, like I said, I agree with how the department settled this case. It is unfortunate for Blake Hunt, but hopefully this case was able to help bring change maybe into the high school sports and football today. It's nearly 10 years, or it is 10 years later, and we see a lot of changes. So, thank you.